Well, it's time for a seance of the House of Day God in Fastport Studios in good old NOLA. This is Road Gang Radio with your hosts, Lindsay Lawler and Jimmy Mack.
That's us. And Jim, this is somebody who you've known for years. You've shared meals with. We've gotten to talk to many times. You've talked to even more times than me. This is your bag. Why is this, do you think, a good time to talk to Lisa? Is it just because it's too obvious to talk to her in October?
We'll probably bring her back anyway because you know that she and her husband and all their friends, they actually make time to go to some of the best Halloween decorations all across Los Angeles. So they do reviews of all that stuff too. It's like, this is like Lisa may be the personification, the living embodiment of a wonder cabinet of all things spooky and horrific and all that kind of stuff. And also Lisa's a master storyteller as well. And, you know, Brad and I were talking yesterday after a very long day. He actually insisted on taking me to the gym. And he and I were actually shooting the breeze about one of the most important things we do here on Road Gang Radio and all across Radio Nemo is actually helping people tell stories. I mean, We Should Write helps people tell stories. This whole morning we spent was kind of figuring out what the story of the road is and how to tell it. And Lisa is so good at that any chance we get a friend where we can dispense with the formalities and get right down to it about how we go about telling stories. And I have a feeling a lot of our listeners, even outside of this format, know Lisa Morton. They probably heard her on Shock Docs or Coast to Coast or NPR's Throughline or CNN's Margins of Error or Chinwag with Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. You know, she's also the host of the weekly Ghost Report podcast. As I said, she lives in Los Angeles, and you can find her online at lisamorton.com. As I said before, she got 6 Bram Stoker Awards. They don't give those out for nothing. She's the author of 4 novels and over 150 short stories, and is a Halloween, and in the case of our particular situation that we want to dig into a little bit later, a paranormal expert. Lisa's always got something new cooking, though. Scaring and daring, terrifying takes on 15 classic tales, a Horror Writers Association anthology. It came out on the 12th and has Lisa's latest story in it. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the show someone, when I'm tagging all those truckers in the post I make along with you, Lindsay, I actually tag Lisa on a regular basis too. Lisa Morton joins us. Good morning, and thank you for waking up at the crack of doom over there in L.A.
Thanks, Jimmy. Well, I'll try to live up to that introduction.
Lisa, you always do. It's not even hard for you. Thank you for coming back and being with us today.
Oh, thanks, Lindsay. Great to be back.
Great to have you back. I want to start here. I mentioned this a few minutes ago because I was thinking last night about talking to you today and remembering our past conversations and where we could dive in to go a little differently outside of your obviously new and current work. But I'm so intrigued, Lisa, about the idea. So you cover both I'm going to call it invented horror and real hauntings, kind of both sides, the fiction and the nonfiction. And I'm so curious to you, what's the core kind of craft difference between writing a scare that's, say, fabricated and writing about a claim that really happened?
Well, it's funny. I'm almost going to give you the non-answer to that, which is there is no real difference in many respects. And this is something, I have a lot of fiction writing friends who will say, oh, I could never write nonfiction. And I'm always telling them, you know, you have an interesting story. Why don't you write an article and try to sell it? And when they say, I don't know how to write nonfiction, I say, it's just like writing fiction. You need a compelling story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and involves your readers emotionally. And once they hear that, it suddenly kind of clicks, and they go, oh, yeah, it's like, okay, the big difference is nonfiction just either involves more research, or if it's like a memoir kind of thing, a little bit more willingness to put your own stuff into it. And I feel like once you get into that, you realize, oh, okay, yeah, the main goal in either case is to make sure that you keep people entertained.
Well, and Lindsay, it seems like that's a really kind of great way to kind of segue in regards to our own listeners and telling their story. And so much of what you focus on and We Should Write is the fact that, you know, when you're looking at a true story, your real job is, as Lisa, you were just saying, your real job becomes, how do I tell this in a way that maximizes the interest in it without lying? That's the thing. It's like the only difficulty of writing nonfiction is that you can do everything you did in the other story. You just can't make anything up. You just got to make sure that whatever you're saying is true, and then it becomes more a matter of style and structure. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. And, I can give people tips on doing research as well, but the big thing is just keep it good and entertaining, and don't approach it that differently from how you write fiction.
But is there, well, okay, this, you've probably, I guess, already answered it, but is there, well, no, you haven't answered this. Is there an ethical line, though, when dramatizing, I guess, these alleged hauntings, especially when real people, of course, and places are involved?
Oh, yeah, definitely, and it gets crossed all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Paging the Conjuring. Sorry, go ahead. Continue. Please.
Yeah, right. And there are, multiple ethical lines, I think, that get crossed on this stuff. I mean, on the one hand, there is the idea that you may be taking people's stories and putting it out there without their permission or their knowledge. And then on the other hand is presenting things, the truth is that most hauntings and most paranormal investigations are kind of boring. I mean, paranormal investigators will tell you that most of what they do is sitting in a dark room for hours and nothing happens. But that's not very interesting. People don't want to read about that. So, of course, you try to find the most interesting points, and sometimes people make those a little bit more than they should. So, I mean, how many times have we watched, a paranormal investigation show and heard them say, something touched me, I mean, come on.
That's Dave with the camera. Dave, those aren't pillows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of those moments.
Well, what is it? Somebody once told me that a song was, Lindsay, a song is the 3 most important minutes of an emotional breakdown. And that the idea that when it's almost like the way, because, Lindsay's husband works, in, these kind of, documentaries, kind of cataloging people, and figuring out what to edit in such a way to make sure that you maximize the most important parts. You don't want to spend an hour there waiting with them. You want to get to the 3 minutes where something went sideways, right? So basically what you're doing is you're figuring out where those 3 minutes are, and without lying, figuring out a way to kind of maximize that. Lindsay, this is such a cool idea, and I love this kind of stuff. There was a collection many years ago called Shadow over Baker Street, where people were actually, famous writers were assigned the task of taking Sherlock Holmes and putting it all in H.P. Lovecraft's world. This is really, really, really fun. Scaring and daring, by the way, Lisa. And don't think you're going to get out of here, since we actually have our new studios in an old house where the spirit of Edgar Degas may exist. Scaring and daring, by the way, is 15 classical tales. Famous authors take new takes on these stories, from Captain Hook running into a dark magic, to Sherlock Holmes escaping graveyards, to Happily Never After for Cinderella. This is a really fun collection. Can you kind of talk about your other contributors, but also how you were approached to be a part of this collection?
Yeah, the Horror Writers Association, which is a nonprofit writers service organization, does these anthologies from time to time where they come up with an idea and an editor, and then the editor and the agent for the organization shop the idea around, get a major deal, and usually they have to attach a few big names to get the deal, and then they open it to submissions from members of the organization. And this particular book was designed for middle grade readers, but I think the stories are so fun that anybody can enjoy them. And the idea was to take these classic public domain characters or books and kind of riff on them in a way that's kind of scary for middle grade kids. It was really fun to be involved with this. I was one of the invited authors in it, and it includes people like Joe Lansdale, and he's riffing on Huckleberry Finn, and Kelly Armstrong is doing Hound of the Baskervilles. Jonathan Mayberry is in here with a story called Freckle and Hide. So, it's just a really, really fun collection. And I did, my favorite movie when I was a kid was the old 1950s version of Journey to the Center of the Earth. I would watch that thing whenever it came on, back in the day before streaming and DVDs even. And it led me to my first novel, which I read when I was 7, was Journey to the Center of the Earth. And so when they invited me in, I was like, okay, I know exactly which one I have to do. And so it was fun to revisit that world and the dinosaurs beneath the earth, all that kind of stuff.
Is there a trick that I keep asking about the underlying tricks, I guess, which is it's not a trick, it's just you do what you do well, I guess. But to reimagining one of these, a canon story as it were, but keeping the bones recognizable while making the fear feel modern. Is that a way to kind of walk that line? Is there a way to walk that line?
It can be a little tricky sometimes, yeah. When you are invited into a book that has a very specific theme, finding your way in sometimes can be a little hard. In fact, I just finished a story this week for a book that will be coming out, I think, later this year on tiki horror. Finding my way into a world of tiki horror turned out to be a little harder than I had expected, even though I knew right from the beginning what I wanted to do with the story. And
wait, what's tiki horror? Like a tiki torch? I don't even know what that would be.
Yeah, actually.
Hawaiian? Is it Hawaiian horror?
Yeah, tiki culture is a huge thing, especially here in Southern California. And I mean, it's been around for decades. When I was a kid, people loved it, which is, like the Polynesian food and bars and restaurants and the big carved figures and the exotica music like Martin Denny and Les Baxter and Hawaiian shirts. I mean, it's a really big culture. And so somebody came up with the idea of doing an anthology of horror stories that are kind of set within this particular culture. And, it's such a fun, peppy, upbeat kind of thing that it was kind of hard to turn it into a horror story.
Masks and fire. I feel like a lot of masks and fire would be the underlying fearful things there.
Yeah, pretty close, although I took off from, there was a restaurant that was in L.A. that closed about a dozen years ago called Bahuka, and we used to love going out. It was out on Rosemead, so a little bit to the east of us, but it was so fun. And one of the things about this place was they had dozens and dozens of gigantic aquariums. I mean, there were aquariums above every booth, and I always thought that was kind of weird, even when we were there. So I kind of took off and riffed on those aquariums.
By the way, you actually brought up so much nostalgia stuff for me. When I was growing up in New Orleans, there was an amusement park on Lake Pontchartrain called Pontchartrain Beach. And, it was, not as big as a Six Flags, but not just some kind of small kind of lip service place. It actually was pretty substantial. In front of it, by the way, Lindsay, was a place called Bally High, which was exactly what you're talking about. And the culture of this stuff is so developed now that people collect all the tiki cups as well. And there are, I don't know if you've seen this, Lisa, there is a T-shirt for Halloween 3 where they've taken the 3 masks and turned them into tiki mugs. The 3 infamous masks from Halloween, the witch, the skeleton, and the jack-o'-lantern, and they've all got them. And you can buy them now in tiki mugs. Our friend Adriana, who you met, Lindsay, actually is a big follower of tiki culture. She's got a whole bunch of Hawaiian shirts and all those cups. She actually worked at a tiki bar a long time ago. And it's a real subculture is a good kind of way to describe it, right? I mean, it's one step next to a parrot head. Is pretty.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things I wanted to do in my story was have the people go to a tiki convention, and I was like, I don't even know if there are such things. It just so happened that there was a gigantic tiki convention in San Diego last weekend. I mean, it's huge.
I'm sorry I missed that. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So now pivoting to seances. And so Lisa, our studio in New Orleans is in the historic Degas house. Edgar Degas and listen, it did live there, and dare I say, still does. So we were there recently, just last month, and we were having a party there, and we had this band called The Coven who was about to play, and like all hell broke loose. This storm rolled in, and booming thunder, shaking the house. Lights kind of twinkled, and I just kept going, Edgar Degas is here. Like you just felt a presence about it. And so we always joke on this show about both as it pertains to the spirits, but also just the idea of summoning. Jim talks about all the time, like creating a seance when it comes to recreating art or creating art, period. So you have wrote the book on seances basically. So for folks who only know the, candles and spirit Ouija boards and shaking houses kind of movie version of it, what historically is a seance and what isn't it rather?
Yeah, the seance is, there are a lot of misconceptions about it. For one thing, it's not centuries old. It dates very specifically to 1848. Before that, when people would try to call up dead spirits, it was always something that you had to do alone, and you had to have like a magic spell book, and it was just ridiculous. But in 1848, these two teenage girls named Kate and Maggie Fox were living in this haunted farmhouse in New York, and they ended up realizing that they could communicate with these spirits by knocking. They would the spirits would knock in response to questions that people asked. So people started showing up at the farmhouse, and before long, there were hundreds of people there. And Maggie and Kate's older sister Leah got the idea of charging for this, and that's how the seance was born. And the most common misconception, I think, is that seances are always scary, and that is not at all what they were in the 19th century. They were fun. I call them like one part revivalist show, one part magic show, one part something a little bit spookier, and like 4 parts party. I mean, they were typically like 10 to 15 people would get together. Yeah, and they might be friends, and they would start by singing. They would sing. Now, the singing actually also served a little bit more of a devious purpose, because they would start singing when the gas lights, because we are talking the 19th century, had been lowered. And by singing, it gave the medium a chance to do things in the dark that no one could now see or hear. So these friends are singing like a popular song at the time or a hymn, and meanwhile the medium is kind of maybe shaking their chair around as they're untying themselves, because quite often they would start by tying the medium to the chair. And this very conveniently covers up the sounds that are being made.
Wow. By the way, I want to tell you that some of our friends out there, Lisa, are already commenting. New format, new joys. Paul Starkey says, good morning, Lisa. Our good friend Trucker Boson says, my ancestor, Edgar Allan Poe, would love this interview, by the way. I was kind of curious, in your research into seances, were there ever any examples of ones that really went wrong? Because I know the answer to this, but I mean, are there examples of things that really went sideways and kind of turned people off on them? Or, what was the kind of the breaking point in regards to people not doing them as much as kind of a genuine party? I mean, what you're describing is a happening to a large degree before we had a word for such a thing. Why did it wane?
Well, it did keep getting debunked. It was all centered around this religion called spiritualism, and one of the central tenets of spiritualism back in the 19th century was that they thought it was the only religion that could be proven scientifically. And of course, when scientists got involved and started investigating, they disproved it over and over and over. At first, it didn't matter to the spiritualists that the scientists kept saying it's all bunk, but eventually that caught up with them. And by the end of the 19th century, it was definitely on the wane. But yes, seances that would go sideways, sometimes, some of them are actually pretty funny. The mediums would have terrible rivalries and might do something like employ a confederate to go into a rival medium seance and, suddenly leap up in the middle of the seance and turn on lights or something like that and reveal what was going on. And there was a medium named Mrs. Guppy. That was her real name, Agnes Guppy, and she was famous for using a gentleman named William Volkman and sending him into a seance with a young medium named Florence Cook, who was one of the biggest mediums in the late 19th century. And he suddenly stood up in the middle of a seance and threw on a light, and Florence's response was still pretending to be this spirit in the now semi-darkness, yelling out, "You've killed my medium."
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's rough. That's Sideways. And by the way, Lisa, Sideways Seance, great band name. I would totally go. I would totally go to that show. Okay. So in that manner, with like that, do you think? So without going the full story, I have had a something happen here in my home, and I believe it was a spirit. my brother-in-law, trying to connect through music through a Google speaker in my kitchen. Why I say I believe it is because you cannot mistake what happened. I would love to tell you about it off air sometime, Lisa, or another time when we have more time. But I'm curious to you. With that being said, it kept happening. And it was through music, and I was like, do spirits find ways to communicate with us that will resonate with us? So like, was I found because of the music connection, or if it's like in something that and love, or out in nature, whatever? Do you think spirits find ways to connect with us that would resonate with that particular person?
Well, and yes, I'm going to preface this by saying I am only a partial believer. So if there are spirits, I would say that yes, sure. One of the popular theories is that they use all kinds of forms of energy to try and communicate with us. Certainly radio waves or things carrying music would fall under the category of energy. And, I mean, if you were a spirit and you were trying to reach out to a loved one, sure, you would probably try something that you know would affect them emotionally. I also, by the way, love the idea of this coming through your Google and your speaker in your house, because there again, new technologies, if there were spirits, they'd surely be finding ways to use this stuff. And I am hearing more about this. I'm hearing things like people finding weird messages recorded on their phones and things coming through, whether it's Alexa or Siri or whatever. I think this seems to be happening more, and it makes perfect sense to me.
Hey, Alexa, scare the crap out of me. It's one of those moments. It's probably, I guess.
Guys, you need to get ready to groan. Our friends on the chat have the following to say. Paul Starkey says, I'm not a medium, I'm a large. Our good friend Trucker Boaston says, a psychic that can't be disproven is a medium well done. Oh, my God. What is wrong with you people? What is wrong? It's funny because, Lindsay just told you the story about what happened the night we had the big party, and the party kept going on fine. People just went inside and drank. But we literally had a band of four women lead singers, a bassist,
Keyboard.
And a bassist and a keyboard. They started doing the music. The storm rolled in, and Lindsay and I immediately, both of us responded like performers. We jumped in to help them get the equipment back inside. And I said, man, oh, man, Lindsay made the comment about Edgar Degas, and I said we should have a seance, and Lindsay and I immediately said, you know who we should contact? Lisa Morton. So we're going to put you on the spot here. Would you be willing at some point to come over here and set up all the accoutrements to have a seance here at the historic Degas House in the city of New Orleans? I know the idea of going to New Orleans is horrible for you, but would you be able to endure it?
Oh, yeah, I would hate to come to one of my favorite cities in the world and hold a seance. That just sounds miserable. Of course, yeah, I mean, I love the idea. I would preface that only by saying I am not a medium, so we'd have to find a really good medium there and involve them.
Well, I want to find a good one in New Orleans anyway. I also was told, I don't know, have you heard of Lilydale, Lisa?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I have been twice and had crazy experiences both time I was there, but was also told the first time the difference that a medium is somebody who has walked. A medium deals with people who have walked this earth, and a psychic connects with people who have not walked this earth, so like the spirit. So whatever you believe or not, that's what I am told is kind of the basic psychic mediums for dummies definition. Does that track for you?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually have not heard that one. What I hear most often is that a medium is contacting the spirits of the dead, and psychics are more involved with the spirits of the living.
The spirits of the living. Huh.
So a psychic might be reading your mind or helping you to communicate with great dead Aunt Fern or something.
Gotcha. Yeah, I liked that tracks as well. I like the one thinking of a psychic, because obviously we hear the term psychic and we immediately think some cuckoo who's got a crystal ball and is a gypsy stealing our money, that kind of thing. And that is for the most part a lot of what it is. But if it's somebody just sort of, I like the idea that it's connecting with something that we don't know or see. And for me, just knowing that there's maybe something else out there. I mean, we're never going to be able to. We've never been able to prove this or that. So it's very interesting to me that you say, you are the sort of non-believer in this, yet you've made your career around it. It gives it more kind of, I think, color and intrigue and creativity that you're creating from a more real place, dare I say. I guess.
Yeah, and I would add that I have friends who are mediums and psychics, and I absolutely adore them, and I believe 1,000% they're completely genuine because I've been around them on a lot of occasions and seen them in action, and I don't know what's going on. My form of skepticism takes just, I don't know. I am not totally convinced that the spirits of the dead are around, but I know something's going on, especially with these friends of mine who are mediums and psychics and who do things that I cannot explain and are really, really wonderful people to boot.
Wouldn't it be kind of fantastic if we discovered that the whole point of the invention of the internet was not to basically, toxify our brains with too much information to handle, but in fact turned out to be a bridgeway portal for the people on the other side to actually finally figure out a way to communicate with us? And can you see that one spirit going to another? Hey, Bob, I don't know if you know this, but if you work through Alexa, you actually can talk to the people over there. It'd be kind of nice, wouldn't it? It'd be kind of.
That's pretty awesome.
It would make it all worthwhile. I'll tell you that right now. Lisa, we got no time left here. You guys know Lisa, screenwriter, author of nonfiction and fiction, prose writer whose work was described by the American Library Association Reader's Advisory Guide to Horror as consistently dark, unsettling, and frightening. I actually will back that up. It's pretty darn wonderful. You should check out all of her stuff at lisamorton.com. What do you got coming up next? Where are you going? What presentation are you giving? What speech are you giving? What are you making happen?
Well, of course, we're in my busy time of the year, so I will be all over the place soon on different interviews and print medium and all that. But I'm really excited about the next nonfiction book that I just signed the deal on. It is called My Name is Legion, The Strange and Terrifying History of Demonic Possession. So that will be taking up my life for the next year.
I got to get Lindsay. I think you muted yourself.
Final question. One seance, Lisa, you wish that you could time travel to observe.
Ooh, probably I would want to go back and see one of the classic 19th century mediums, probably Florence Cook, who I'm kind of fascinated by. And just see, because I think they were very theatrical and very entertaining, and I would love to see one in action.
Well, I love the recipe that you said for equal parts entertaining, magic, spooky, and a party. That sounds like a recipe for the best party I've ever been to. Lisa Morton, thank you so much again for making time for us this morning, especially so early in the morning. Go over to Lisa Morton, that's Morton, MORTON.com. Have the best day, or go back to sleep so you can dream some spooky stuff.
Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. Always love talking to you.